NASCAR has come roaring back in a major way, largely thanks to its latest and greatest rivalry between two of the most popular drivers in the series. How's it going, everyone? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. Gosh, it feels good to have the Gander RV and Outdoor Truck Series back. Last night was Truck Series Night in America for the first time in over 3 months. 3 months we had to go without truck racing. Last night was fantastic, even though it came down to a couple of Cup Series drivers battling it out at the end. Last night was fun, F-U-N, amazing. We're going to talk about those top two finishers in just a moment, but before I get too far into this episode, I want to plug the fact that we do have new t-shirts once again down near the description of this episode. If you're watching on mobile, you're watching on desktop, it should be down there. You can also go to teespring.com/stores/estep to get yourself an Out of the Groove t-shirt, much like the one I'm wearing right here. We also have a few other designs available, so go check those out. I appreciate you guys supporting the channel, supporting the show. There is another Cup Series race later tonight, so I'll have another video up after that. Of course, weather permitting, there's a chance the race could get pushed to tomorrow afternoon, so I don't know, fingers crossed on that. Weather has stayed away in some surprising ways, but it's also interfered in some pretty major ways so far in NASCAR's return. NASCAR picked a rough week to return. They had like a tropical storm off the coast of the Carolinas last week. They have another one brewing right now. Rough week for NASCAR to return when it's all said and done, but NASCAR has come back in a major way, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Starting with that first race back a week and a half ago at Darlington. Remember, TV ratings were way up for that race compared to other May races from a year ago. Way up. Huge boost thanks to being one of the only major sports on television and for being the first race back. And there's drama in that race with Jimmy Johnson wrecking from the lead. Then fast forward to Wednesday night, Cup Series returns once again, and there's that dramatic finish, which we'll talk about for a lot of this episode. Then Thursday, the Xfinity Series had that great finish. Chase Briscoe won over all of our hearts with that gutsy performance and his ability to hold off Kyle Busch in the home stretch. And then Sunday, of course, the Coca-Cola 600 had drama in that race before the green flag even dropped. Big penalties, which we talked about earlier this week on the show. Last night was the Truck Series with the bounty and everything on the line. NASCAR has come back in a pretty major way. Not every race has been a super powered, like a super splash. The Coke 600 was pretty dry, pretty boring, but NASCAR has still come back in a very significant way. And most responsible for that, I would say, is the new rivalry between Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott, two of the, arguably the two most popular, or at least most recognizable drivers in the series right now. In today's video, I'm going to talk about all of the events from the past week or so that have led up to where we are now, to last night's race, which in some ways felt like the big climactic battle, but in other ways kind of felt like the rivalry was just getting started. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on that, talk about where this new rivalry goes from here, because this is exactly what NASCAR needs. NASCAR needs some of these younger drivers who, for a couple years, kind of underperformed. Some of them are starting to get their feet underneath them. Chase Elliott, most notably, has turned into a real superstar, winning races pretty consistently, contending consistently. They need some of these new younger drivers to really start to kind of step out of their comfort zone, in a sense, and really embrace the fact that they are the new face of a new NASCAR. Last couple years, NASCAR's still been relying on Kevin Harvick and Jimmy Johnson and drivers like that to sell tickets. At some point, they're going to need to be able to rely on Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott, drivers like that to kind of emerge as not just superstars in name. Chase Elliott, of course, is one most popular driver the last couple years, but they're also going to need to emerge as superstars on the racetrack. Drivers who aren't afraid to stick it to guys like Kyle Busch, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, drivers who've been around a while. And Chase Elliott in the last week, specifically last night, has started to live up to that occasion. So we're going to talk about this new, latest and greatest rivalry between two of the most popular drivers in NASCAR. This is great for the sport. This is like if Alex Rodriguez and David Ortiz at their peak were trading blows at Fenway Park on a Friday night. That's the level this is for a NASCAR fan when you see these two superstars kind of jabbing back and forth. Anyway, let's start with a week ago, Wednesday night's race at Darlington, because that's really where this whole thing started. These two drivers did not really have a history. Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch had been pretty cordial with each other up to this point. I mean, they've never really had any on-track incidents in any major way that I can think of. Kyle Busch is familiar with a lot of the guys at Hendrick Motorsports. Remember, he started his career at Hendrick Motorsports. His Cup Series career, first few years, was in the 5 car. So he knows some of the guys working over there at Hendrick, working on Chase Elliott's number 9 car. So the two of them had a pretty just low-key, didn't really take much note of each other kind of relationship, it felt like, for the last several years. until Wednesday night, when things kind of got out of hand. Late in last week's race, of course, Kyle Busch got into the back of Chase Elliott, spun him around, took him out, ended up costing him a very real chance at the win, and if nothing else, cost him an obvious top 5, top 3 finish. So Chase Elliott was not happy. And remember, Chase Elliott got out of the car and gave him the bird, flipped him off for several seconds on national television. It was the middle finger seen round the world, heard round the world, however that saying goes. But yeah, Chase Elliott was none too pleased. Of course, after giving the bird, given NASCAR's sort of social distancing protocols, he went to the infield care center, basically left the track. We never got to see him confront Kyle Busch face to face. Instead, his crew chief, Alan Gustafson, was left to kind of do the arguing with Kyle Busch. They went back and forth on pit road after the race. He called the incident an accident, accepted blame for it, and apologized to Chase Elliott's team for the incident. Kyle Busch later said about Chase Elliott, quote, "Him and I have always had a cordial relationship over the years. Certainly we're not near as close. We're not friends like you'd say him and Ryan Blaney are, or anything like that. I've known him since he was 12 or 13 years old. Been racing with him ever since then. Late models, super late models, trucks, Xfinity cars, all that sort of stuff. I'll definitely reach out to him and tell him I'm sorry. Tell him that I hate that it happened. It's all I can do. That doesn't change the outcome of the night." In his post-race interview, Alan Gustafson seemed to accept Kyle Busch's apology, or Kyle Busch saying it was an accident, but he still expressed a lot of frustration, saying that he was tired of getting run over like that.
So, you get tired of getting run over like that. And
Chase Elliott, of course, has had run-ins with other Joe Gibbs racing cars early in his career as well. Remember 2017 Martinsville, he and Denny Hamlin got into it after Hamlin just blew the corner and took Chase out, and that, of course, was a whole rivalry for the last few weeks of that season. But then it looked like maybe this rivalry was going to settle down pretty quickly, because the next day Kyle Busch said that he called Chase Elliott, called their conversation really good. He said Chase Elliott was a class act, and Chase Elliott afterwards said that he was frustrated about the wreck, but he accepted Kyle Busch calling it an accident, and just felt like the two drivers had more or less moved on. The week just kept getting worse for Chase Elliott. Fast forward to this last weekend's Coca-Cola 600, Chase Elliott looked to have the race won. He was driving away, laps winding down, then with 2 to go, right before the white flag, his teammate William Byron cuts a tire down, brings out a caution, puts Chase Elliott in a box. We talked about it afterwards. Alan Gustafson chooses to pit. Controversial whether that was the right decision or not. Of course, really anything Chase Elliott, the leader, did in that case, I think the rest of the field was going to do the opposite, and it was going to be very difficult for Chase Elliott to win that race the moment the yellow flag flew out. When that caution came out, Chase Elliott was very upset over the radio. Not really at anyone in particular, just at the circumstances, but sounds like a lot of expletives were used. Anyway, after the pit stops, after Chase Elliott lost his track position, he was not able to get back to the race lead. He ended up getting back to second when Jimmy Johnson ended up being disqualified, so put up an admirable effort, but Chase Elliott, this close to his first win of the season, missed out, really due to no fault of his own. And after the race on pit road, Fox cameras caught Kyle Busch coming up to Chase Elliott and kind of giving him a pat on the back, and we didn't really know what was said. Chase later said that Kyle Busch just told him he felt bad for him, given obviously the circumstance of him kind of having the win snatched out from under him. So, little gesture there, but a lot of people took that as, oh, it's water under the bridge. Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, they had respect for each other before Darlington. Obviously, Darlington was rough, put him in a tough situation, but now it looks like they're back to kind of having respect for each other. A lot of fans then just assumed it was fine and dandy, all was well. Fast forward to last night's Truck Series race. Remember months ago, before the pandemic hit, Kevin Harvick offered up $50,000 to any Cup Series driver who could go down to the Truck Series and beat Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch at the time had like a 7-race win streak in the trucks. He hadn't lost a race since 2018, something ridiculous like that. So Kevin Harvick, and then later Marcus Lemonis from Camping World, offered to match the whole deal. So at that point, it was $100,000 to any Cup driver who could go down into the trucks and beat Kyle Busch. This was done in an attempt, obviously for PR. Kevin Harvick gets some good PR, gets some press. He can talk to people about the money. Kevin Harvick and Busch Beer get some plugs. But at the end of the day, it was done to help kind of spice up the Truck Series, because it was clear in the few races Kyle Busch races here, nobody had anything for him. It was going to take a Cup Series driver in a decent car or decent truck to beat him. I mean, that's just true. Kyle Busch is really freaking good. Nobody in the Truck Series has anything for him talent-wise. A lot of Cup Series drivers jumped at the chance, and last night Chase Elliott was the first full-time Cup Series driver to really make a stand against Kyle Busch in the Truck Series. Brennan Poole was also technically in contention, being a full-time Cup Series Rookie of the Year contender, as well as John Hunter Nemechek. Both of those drivers were in the race last night as well, but Chase Elliott was the first real high-profile driver to go after Kyle Busch. The bounty was still on. Kevin Harvick made it clear beforehand, Marcus Lemonis made it clear, bounty was still on, but now the one difference is that instead of the $50,000 or $100,000 going to the driver's pocket, it's going to the driver's charity, whatever Chase Elliott charity he supports, whatever charity Kyle Busch supports, it was going to go to charity, which all great, especially in the wake of this pandemic, makes a whole lot of sense. But the timing on this could not have been better. A week after the drama at Darlington between Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott, they would be duking it out with pride and with real money on the line for charity. It just set up perfectly. The timing was excellent. So last night, Chase Elliott in a GMS-funded truck ended up with the lead late, trying to hold off a hard-charging Kyle Busch in his own equipment, of course. Now, Busch had to deal with a poor handling truck all night long. I was listening to some of his radio, and he was really never happy with the truck, even when he was leading and dominating at certain points in the race. But that being said, he was still able to close the gap on Chase late in the race, but as the final laps wound down, he actually faded. And Chase Elliott, in his first truck start since I think like 2017, won the race, beat Kyle Busch at his own game, and won the Kevin Harvick-Marcus Lemonis bounty. So how would both drivers react? Well, Chase Elliott wins the race. He goes out, does some little burnouts, gets out of the truck, does a little TV interview. Oh, I'm just happy for my guys. Goes over, collects the checkered flag, and then takes a bow. Does the signature Kyle Busch bow to the TV camera. Obviously nobody there in the stands, but he looked right into the FS1 camera the way I'm looking at you, and he hit him with that bow. It was pretty good. It wasn't too bad. I greatly appreciated Chase Elliott with the gesture. Kyle Busch got out of his truck on pit road, looked visibly frustrated. They did not air a TV interview with him. FS1 aired interviews with Chase Elliott, the winner, and Zane Smith, who had a great standout performance last night, who finished third. They did not show the Kyle Busch interview, which led to people on Twitter being like, where's Kyle Busch? Did he stiff the media? Did he stiff the media? Everyone likes to jump to conclusions. In fairness, because Kyle Busch has stiffed the media in the past, but no, that's not what happened in this case. Kyle Busch's interview, per Alan Cavanagh, was just filled with an expletive, and they couldn't edit it in time to show it live, so they had to show it later. So Fox Sports, later, a little while after the checkered flag, after the broadcast had gone off the air, posted the interview, the edited interview, of course, to social media, and that's where people saw it.
I don't know, just got tight. Sucks when you start the race with broken pieces after sitting for 6 months, so there's going to be some talking when I get home. That's not acceptable. We got beat. Only took one wonder. One time. That's all it takes. Got beat.
There was the line in there with the mask and everything. It was kind of hard to tell what he was saying. It was hard to see if he was calling Chase Elliott a one-hit wonder or something like that, or if he was saying that, his team made a blunder and that's all it took for him to be beat. Hearing that even for like the fifth time, I'm not entirely sure what he said there, but the point is, in that interview, he's not really taking too many shots at Chase Elliott. It looks like he's more frustrated with his own team than anything. You have not seen true Kyle Busch rage until you have seen team owner Kyle Busch step in front of the microphones, because he looked angry. I'm sorry, if you're one of the guys at the Kyle Busch Motorsports shop, he's coming for one of y'all. But anyway, that was Kyle Busch's on-track interview. Of course, both drivers afterwards in the virtual media center, it's basically just a Zoom meeting, gave a few other statements, and this is where things got a little more interesting.
It's having fun, man. It's not a dig at anybody.
Chase Elliott said that the bow was not a dig at anyone. Come on, Chase Elliott. Own up to it, my guy. Chase Elliott is great at celebrating wins. Remember after he won the Roval last year? Remember in that race, he hit the turn one wall, looked horrible, looked like he choked the win away. He rustled through the field, got the win, and then later did burnouts on that same turn one, the Tums heartburn turn wall, and then later he was standing out of the car as it rolled backwards. That was an epic post-race celebration. Tonight with the bow, just an absolute savage. His interviews, though, whenever Chase Elliott gets a microphone in front of his face, he is the most boring guy on the planet. When they put the microphone away and he's able to kind of take a few steps back from the cameras, oh my God, he's on another level. With the celebrations, the bow, the man is pretty darn savage. But the moment they put a microphone in front of his face for that little post-race Zoom meeting, it wasn't a dig at anyone. It was obviously a dig at Kyle Busch. What are you doing? You did his bow. Don't act like you weren't trying to start something with Kyle Busch. You were clearly. I'm sorry, Chase Elliott. I don't buy that for a moment. You can say whatever you want to say. I don't buy it. Kyle Busch was a little more abrupt with his answer to the question of whether or not he even saw Chase Elliott do the bow. He said he didn't see the bow.
Imitation is the strongest form of flattery or something. I don't know what it is, but that's cute.
Very classic kind of tongue-in-cheek Kyle Busch response to kind of a controversy. At the end of the day, both drivers come out ahead of this. Obviously, Chase Elliott winning the race, getting some form of redemption for all the bad breaks he's had in the last week or so. That's good for Chase Elliott, good for his fans, good for the sport to see someone other than Kyle Busch end up in victory lane in a truck race. I'm just going to be honest there. But this is also good for Kyle Busch, because at the end of the day, the entire bounty situation, from when it started, from day one, should have been flattering to Kyle Busch. Obviously, he wants to win at all times. The dude is an absolute competitor. He wants to win everything and anything. He wants to be the first. He's that kid who tried to be the first one to line up when the teacher said we're going to recess. He would hustle, fight through those other kids. He'd throw toddlers to the ground to make sure he was first in line, because Kyle Busch wants to be first at everything, and I can respect that for sure. But this was in a lot of ways, this was Kevin Harvick and the rest of the drivers kind of flattering Kyle Busch. Like I said, he hadn't lost a truck race since 2018. The dude's amazing. Everyone knows it. That's why, Kevin Harvick putting this extra money out there. that's something that you used to do years ago. That was like a legend type thing that people would do in short tracks back in the day, and they might still do it to this day, but that's the type of stuff they would do when there was one driver who was just so dominant, so good that they need to add some incentive, get some other better competitors out here. Kyle Busch should not be insulted by the bounty. He should be maybe frustrated that he didn't win, of course, but insulted by the bounty, definitely not. This was nothing but a kind of a show of respect to how great Kyle Busch has been in the truck series the last couple of years, forever really. So yeah, I don't think either driver really comes out behind here. Kyle Busch, this is going to be sort of like a mythical thing we talked about for many years. Remember when they put a bounty on his head because he was so freaking good? And then Chase Elliott, of course, remember when he actually beat Kyle Busch on that really rough week when NASCAR came out. Great things for both drivers. Both drivers came out ahead from this race last night. So as far as my reaction to this and kind of where it goes from here, first and foremost, you guys know I'm going to say this, but it's great for the sport to see the two of the most recognizable drivers it has battling it back and forth, kind of trading, verbal blows, kind of little digs at each other, obviously battling it door to door on the racetrack every week, or multiple times a week, the way things are right now. That's great for NASCAR, especially because Chase Elliott obviously is the most popular driver, at least on paper. He has been voted the most popular driver the last couple of years. Kyle Busch, I would argue, is maybe the most recognizable driver in NASCAR just because he drives the M&M's car. I know Jimmy Johnson's a 7-time champion. A lot of people know who Jimmy Johnson is, but Kyle Busch is on a similar level. So Kyle Busch versus Chase Elliott is huge. Where does this go from here? I do think in the short term, this rivalry is kind of done. I think last night's win for Chase Elliott kind of put some of those bad feelings to rest. He feels like he got his revenge. He got his social media revenge by taking the bow, by getting everyone kind of riled up on Twitter, on social media. I think Chase Elliott in a lot of ways got enough revenge to tide him over for the time being. That being said, I think both drivers are kind of on a short fuse right now. They're both sort of ticking time bombs. And with tracks like Bristol coming up next weekend and Martinsville coming up before too long, short tracks where beating and banging is fairly common, I would not be surprised if these two drivers got into it again. I think the moment Kyle Busch does anything to frustrate Chase Elliott on the racetrack, Chase Elliott's going to see payback in his eyes. That's going to validate him knocking Kyle Busch out of the way one more time. That's what I think it takes. I don't think right now Chase Elliott is planning on retaliating in any major way for what happened at Darlington a week ago. It was sucky. It was terrible for his team, tore up a lot of equipment there, but I don't think Chase Elliott is actively seeking out payback at the moment for that incident. I think last night's win at Charlotte in the trucks, I know it's just the trucks, but I think that in a lot of ways put many of those bad feelings to rest. And again, remember, Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch do not really have any long-term history. This is all in the past week, but I just think it's a short fuse. I think back to, Matt Kenseth and Team Penske. I think Matt Kenseth's reactions to Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski back in 2014, 2015 are what led to him exploding at Martinsville that year and taking out Joey Logano and that whole infamous incident. I think Chase Elliott, he had the issue with Hamlin, a Joe Gibbs car a couple of years ago. He's had some of these issues now with Kyle Busch this year. His kind of issues with Joe Gibbs Racing in general might continue to mount. And if they continue to mount in any more significant ways, if Kyle Busch accidentally takes him out, if Truex or Eric Jones gets involved somehow and accidentally takes out Chase Elliott, yeah, Chase might snap. Because with Matt Kenseth's case, he was mad at Brad Keselowski for Charlotte in 2014. He was mad at Joey Logano for Kansas in 2015. And then he was mad at Brad Keselowski again for Martinsville 2015. And that's why he came back on the track and wrecked Joey Logano in retaliation, more so I think to Roger Penske than anyone else. Chase Elliott can't be happy with Joe Gibbs Racing because in the last 3 years, they've tore up a couple of his really good race cars battling for the win. And Chase Elliott really hasn't had anything to do with it. He hasn't done anything to deserve that. In a lot of ways, maybe Chase Elliott winning that truck race last night was the best thing that could happen to Kyle Busch on the Cup Series side of things. Of course, Kyle Busch is never going to see it that way. He wants to win every race under the sun. But in some ways, especially long terms, when we're talking about him trying to win a race, because Kyle doesn't have any Cup wins yet this year, trying to make the playoffs, get as many playoff points as possible, this could be the best thing that happened to Kyle Busch, is losing that, just one-off truck race last night. But that's my reaction to the whole incident. It's fun to follow along because it's fun to have two of your most popular drivers going at it and kind of digging at each other. Both these drivers are proving that they have a petty side to it too. They're not just on the note. They hold grudges a little bit. I think Kyle Busch was clearly miffed by Chase Elliott taking the bow last night. I think Kyle Busch, after their phone call, after him coming up to him after the Coke 600, I think Kyle Busch thought maybe he'd kind of made amends with Chase Elliott, that they were buddies again. After now the bowing incident, now Kyle Busch might be feeling like he got played a little bit. He's like, oh, I thought we were kind of back on good terms, buddy. I mean, what was that about? I'm just saying, the human psychology is a fascinating thing, and Kyle Busch is always a little on edge, not quite sure what he's going to do. So very interesting to see where this goes from here. I still think Chase Elliott's the one who holds all the cards at this point. I think if Kyle Busch goes out and does something to Chase Elliott, it's just going to amplify Chase Elliott's response. I think Chase Elliott, if anything, still owes Kyle Busch a little bit of payback for Darlington last week, but that's my reaction to this. I want to know what you guys think. Whose side are you? Are you guys on Team Chase Elliott, Team Kyle Busch? Who are you watching most closely going forward? Of course, course, tonight's race at Charlotte, and then we got the short track this weekend, Bristol. I am so excited for that. That's all I've got for this episode. Thank you all a ton for watching. Remember to follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, get yourself a new Out of the Groove t-shirt. Of course, subscribe if you are new, and a big thank you, as always, to my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate your support during these uncertain times. Really helps the show continue to grow, continue to stay kind of on schedule. So if you also want to support the channel and support the show and help me get to the racetrack sooner rather than later, you can check out that top link down in the description. I greatly appreciate it, y'all. If you missed it, Brennan Poole was on the show earlier in the week. He went very in depth as to kind of how he got started, his whole racing journey. If you wanted to learn anything about Brennan Poole, you can basically get the entire story in that interview I did with him earlier this week, so go check that out. As for this show, next episode will be either tonight after the race tonight, hopefully weather stays away, or tomorrow if the race is run Thursday afternoon. So the next time you see me, it'll be a race review. That'll be fun. And then we go short track and racing in Bristol this weekend. I'm super excited for that. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you again very, very soon. Take care, y'all.